All right, welcome to another episode of Real Estate Investing with a special focus on affordable housing. Today, we got my guest, Jeremy Garrido. He is from North Carolina. He's a full-time real estate investor, a family man, a great husband and dad. So we are happy to welcome Jeremy. Jeremy, welcome to the show, man. Tell us a little bit about yourself and just your background and how'd you got involved into real estate investing.
Thanks for having me, Kent, man. I appreciate that. I think just like everybody else, we all want to do better than working for somebody, right? So we all start off. I graduated college in 2008. We all know what happened in 2008. It was not a pleasant time. So my father basically, I graduated. So my dad was like, all right, well, time to work. Here I am applying for jobs at like Bank of America and all these other places. And it was just like, I don't want to work for somebody. I need to work for myself, right? So unfortunately, though, I wasn't in the position at that time. I had zero knowledge. I'm 18, or not 18, sorry, 21. I don't know anything about anything except like manual labor. So my dad, I just went working with him. He was a painter, so he worked with contractors all the time, right? And that was kind of like the first steps. We talked to his contractor. This guy's name's Hank, and Hank actually did all Section 8. Everything he had is Section 8. He was a builder. He'd also GC'd. He just knew everybody and anybody in his little area in New York. This is because I'm from New York. So this is all in New York, and he's just kind of we're working on his houses and learning everything we can. Well, I am anyway, because my dad is old school, this is my job. This is what I'm going to do. This is all I know. And that's it. Right. So slap some paint on the walls, take a roller. Let's do that. A little caulking, a little putty, finish the job, on to the next one. Right. But, at the same time, I'm absorbing everything. Like, all right, this guy is buying the houses for this much money. He's I know what my dad's charging him. I talk to the guys doing the carpentry. I know how much they're charging them. At the end of the day, everything's a public record. You kind of do a little research and you're like, oh man, this guy just made like 60 grand with other people's money. And he still has equity position in the property. And he's renting the properties to Section 8. I was like, ooh, this guy's doing something right. Right. So time goes on. I continue working with him. My dad. Eventually, I got a job with an airline. Boring job, IT. I got it to the position where I could do it remotely. I think I'm smart sometimes. So I was able to basically offload my work to someone else and, call it grimy or sketchy, whatever you want. But I was like, hey, man, work smarter, not harder, right? I'm a manager, so I'll do that. And ultimately, the company did really well. And I was able to buy my first house. And I did it over in New York. I paid like every normal traditional person 20% down. Here's a mortgage. Let's figure it out. Like, how's the rent's going to come in? And I always had the intention to rent. Like, I don't care about buying for myself. I mean, now I do. Obviously, you got a family. But back then, I'm what, 26 or something. Buy my first house. I keep my W-2, but I go to Hank and I was like, yo, dude, so like, what do I do like about Section 8? He's like, talk to this person down at the office, in New York, you got to get like a little permission to rent. And then the inspectors come, they check it all out, make sure everything's cool, put somebody in there, they pay market rent. They cover most of the time, like 90% of the tenant's cost, and then they pay the difference. So at the end of the day, you're like, cool. All right. My mortgage is, I think it was like because New York's expensive, right?
Yeah.
Like $1,000, which in hindsight, it's not really that much, right? But the Section 8 was paying $1,800.
Wow.
So I was like, done. Like, you don't got to tell me twice. So, you buy one property, and then my company kept doing well. I got another and another. And I think I got up to like 4 in New York.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. And I bought them for like 120. And then eventually I came down to North Carolina to visit some family who were also, contractors, painters, of course. And then I come visit, and because they were trying to get me down here for years. They're like, come check it out. all the
All
beautiful
right.
women, blah, 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 cheap drinks. I was like, sold, man. I'm still young, you know?
Yep.
So I come to visit and I see it, and I'm from Long Island, New York. So I come down here and I'm like, holy crap. Like, this is like an early version of Long Island, which some would say is really bad. But I didn't think of it that way. I thought of it like money, man. I see dollar
Yes.
signs. I'm seeing dollar signs. So I sold 2 properties in New York. And when I sold them, so if I bought them for 120, I sold them for like 200 and change.
Wow. Great
So
gain.
I was like, all right. And by then, you know, I'm at long-term capital gain, so my tax wasn't crazy. It was worth the redeployment, right? The adjustment. Because guess what? My first house here in North Carolina was a duplex. I bought it for 40 grand. Bought it for 40 grand. I put in 40 to fix it because they had messed it all up.
Yep.
And then I made some friends here. I always had the intention of renting too, right? So I had a friend here who coincidentally worked for a public housing company. The public housing company in this case it's like Section 8. It's actually called Trillium in here, but they don't work with just Section 8 people. Section 8 people are more for folk who just like kind of make a little less money, but they have a job and you know they can pay the difference. Where this other company is basically for people with disabilities most of the time, and I don't mean like you know they have like a real mental problem, but they are on medicine and they need help and they have support, but the government pays for everything, right? So it's funny. I got one of them calling me right now. Don't worry, I'm not going to answer the phone. But so I was like, cool. How much are the rents and my mortgage? And because I still didn't know anything creative. Very traditional, like very basic. So this is 2016, I think, or something like that. I buy the house and all right, 20% down. Here's a mortgage. Bank needs some proof of funds. I'm like, here you go. Just sold these things. Okay, cool. Here's your mortgage, $1,000. I was like, all right, cool. So I did that. And, you know, I put in all that money and, so if my mortgage was $1,000, this duplex was giving me $2,000. I was like, cool.
Wow, that's great cash flow.
I was like, that's some decent cash flow. But the kicker was, you know, with this whole interest rate stuff is down the line, I guess I kind of skip ahead. So I'm going to skip forward a little bit and then skip back.
Yep.
But skipping ahead of that property, it's like, all right, well, I paid it for this much. And this is not, you know, for anybody that watches, this is not a normal time. Back when these interest rates were so freaking low, you literally had to throw a dart and you would succeed. Now is like the true test, right? With the rates going back up higher and it's rough. But when I did it, I mean, like, I bought the house, I rented it out, I did a cash out refi, so I put in 80 on that freaking property, and I got $210,000 mortgage at like a 3% rate. So my mortgage was still $1,000, and I got that house free.
Wow, and congrats! That's a home run right there. Love it.
And then some, right? But that's like a couple years ago. Well, not ago. Well, what was it? Maybe like 2 or 3 years ago. So the rates were still nice. But with all the other proceedings I made for my other properties, like I got that one house for 40, I got another one for 60, another one for 15. Like, man, I was like collecting trash. I hate to say trash, but the neighborhoods I was getting them in were not good. And, you know, we'll talk about that. And the problems with buying in essentially like D-class neighborhoods, not good. If I could recommend anybody to do it, I would say stay away. Don't do it. Because unless you have the kind of fortitude to deal with it, it's hard, man. I got lucky. I got lucky in that the prices were reasonable. The rents were solid. The other ones I paid cash. I mean, I cashed out refied all of them, basically. But I had met, when I bought the first duplex, I had found a contractor. And he happened to be in that area. He knows everybody. Everybody knows him. So I don't want to make it sound weird, but essentially he was like very well known in the area, and nobody would mess with anything that he was involved in, right?
Got it.
Because you would say, well, why would you hire somebody like that? I was like, well, he was affordable. Number one, he was getting his feet wet. And now we're good friends. Like, he does all my properties. You know, he's grown. I help him grow. He's helped me grow.
I love it.
And you scratch my back, right? And that's just how it works. But why I bring this up is this person in this case is well connected, and not everybody's going to have that chance. Like, if anybody even ventures to these kind of neighborhoods, and you're talking about neighborhoods where overdoses, shootouts, like police all over the place, you know, again, would not suggest it, you know, and I don't really look like the person that can, you know, hang out in that area either. And it's tough, man. And you get tenants who destroy things, die. That's a big one. And like I said, it's hard, man. Doing the low income housing for Section 8 is one thing, but then when you dabble in the places I was, it's like a next level, because you don't want to put in that clientele into better neighborhoods. And it sounds like I'm like putting like a red tape, you know, something that's illegal. You can't do that in real estate, right? The red line, not red tape. But you can't when it's people with mental issues that, you know, leave feces, layers of feces on the floor, and trash, like fires. I wish I could show you the check. I had an insurance claim check because, you know, somebody lit a house on fire.
Oh my God. What?
It's all fun times, but it's not easy. Now, I don't want to like make people feel scared. Like, oh man, I don't want to do Section 8 or any of that low income stuff. It's hard. It is. But it depends on the kind of person you are. I've always been a very kind person. I'm a nice person, and I like giving people opportunity. And you know what? Many of my properties, like bad business decisions, frankly, I didn't make as much money as I wanted to. And I'm not trying to like butter things up, but like I did help people, right?
Yes.
So to some, you go for the bottom dollar. For me, it's more like I'm helping these people get better. Yes,
I love that.
I try to profit too, right? I do have a family to feed, a mortgage to pay, and everything. But ultimately, I like helping people. You know, some of these folk, my tenants, they have agencies that work with them for like mental health issues. They call them up and they tell them their problems, this, that, and the other. Many times, I give them my number and they call me, you know, and I'm just a landlord. Like normal people don't, the landlords don't talk to the tenants for like Section 8 issues. Well, maybe for Section 8, because you do work directly with the tenant. But for this one, the tenant would call the agency, and the agency then calls the landlord to really like let the landlord know what's happening and if something needs to be done, where they basically have direct access to me, you know? And that's, I like seeing. Yeah. So unfortunately, this one is about a renewing a lease. So it's not so bad. Nothing's on fire, which is great.
Oh, that's so let me kind of bring everybody up back to the present. It seems like you have picked one of the most challenging routes to start in Section 8 sometimes, right?
100%.
You had a lot of success in New York.
Yeah.
But I think for people that are thinking about this, and sometimes these lower entry prices or purchase prices attract certain folks, but you have to understand that sometimes there are different problems that comes along with it. And if you were to take that challenge on, you had to do something what you did, Jeremy, where you found a friend in that neighborhood that's respected. That's respected, and for people to not mess with your property, because who knows, right? A squatter could have entered the property, and then boom, you would have even more headaches along that
100%.
route, right?
And I've dealt with squatters too. You know, it's not easy. It's not easy, and you can't panic. and you just have to take things by day, man, minute by minute. Sometimes
and I think that's what's so great about real estate investing, but also for you, and knowing that you have that grit to like, hey, when the problem comes up, I will be able to solve it. A lot of people don't even take that chance because they have this fear of the unknown. They're like, oh, what if this happens? What if this happens? And think the worst case scenario. Here you are, Jeremy, sharing your stories. Like, hey, I have had overdoses in the neighborhoods. I've had deaths in the neighborhoods. These are real things that can happen when you own shelter for a lot of people in real estate. So I want to get to like your portfolio now. Like, what does your portfolio look like right now? Like, how many Section 8 properties, how many short-term rentals do you have right now, and how are you managing all of it?
Sure. I think at one point I've been disposing of a few, because there are just sometimes you have to learn when to get out, right? So I think I'm up to like 11 properties, of which 4 or 5 are in the trilliums. Because I would just say Section 8. We'll just make it easy. There's Section 8. Low income, Section 8. And the other ones are, I think, 3 on Airbnb. What does that bring me? 5, 6, 7, 8. Yes. And then I disposed of 3. I sold them off because it just wasn't worth that effort anymore. Like I said, there comes a point where, yes, you want to help everybody, but then when the agencies aren't helping you, that's when you gotta be like, okay, then I'm shifting. I am selling it, as long as you're making a profit, of course. Like I said, I got lucky when I bought mine, right? So I was able to still make a generous profit from rents, from resale, and everything. But so I don't feel bad even selling it at a discount. And actually, I have a closing on Wednesday, I think, for one of them.
Wow. Okay. All right.
So yeah, I mean, but like I said, you have to sell it at a discount, unfortunately. And it's not like a wholesale where you're selling it at 50 cents on a dollar, you know. So the properties are in okay-ish condition.
Got it.
But where they're located, maybe if the interest rates, I'm kind of kicking myself a little bit, and I was thinking about it, and I wish I had done it at the peak, right? But we all miss those opportunities. Like, none of us are genies. We're all like, okay, it's gonna go lower a little bit. The rates are gonna go a little lower. The rates are gonna go a little lower. I'll be able to make $200,000 on the resale of that property. Like, let me just hold on to it for a minute, and then bam, everything changes. Everything changes. And that's okay, you know, but you can't live being like, oh man, I'm like so mad and salty that you just can't do it. There's always alternatives in everything you do, right, in life. So you can't think of it that way as a loss. It's a learning experience.
Always, and I think what you talked about is just like not trying to time the market, where you have learned where sometimes you get bit when you are trying to time the market, and that's perfectly okay. But it shows you like, hey, when you take consistent action over time, I would argue it's definitely not luck for you, man. Like, you took the preparation, you analyzed the properties, you bought the properties, you took the action. That's more than like 90% of the world, maybe even 99% of the world, right?
That's what they say, right? I always I feel like sometimes comparing yourself to others is like the worst thing you can do. It's the worst thing you can do. You have all these huge players that, for example, there's one guy in my neighborhood. I'm not going to mention names because I'm not getting into any trouble, but not a good person. Very much into Section 8. Not a good person. And they don't care. They're the guys that are just the bottom line. Like, I'm going to buy this property. I'm going to rent it out. Maybe I'll resell the portfolio and make a couple $1 million on the resale. You compare it to them, you're like, man, like, by me playing my nice game, I grew very slowly. Some would say that's admirable. Some would say that's stupid, right? I like to consider it admirable, and a combination of stupid. Because yeah, man, who doesn't want to own, 1,000 units, 1,000 doors, 2,000 doors, and then grow. But there's a humongous learning curve and you don't know what the other person did, right? It's like with syndications. You see all these people like, I own 5,000 doors and you should join my syndication, blah, 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 blah. And then you look into the fine print and you're like, how much of the 5,000 doors do you own? Oh, you own like 0.5% because you're like, you did some capital raising. It's like, all right, good for you.
Yes, right.
But you don't own anything, dude. Cool. You get the tax incentives and the depreciation and all these other things. And you, I guess, get to write on your webpage, you help manage 5,000 doors, but like you don't own anything.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes they're doing it for the accolades, right? And I love that you are doing it out of the heart, like out of a good heart to help people.
Right.
And I think that is what your kids are going to grow up seeing. Like, oh, my dad and my parents were not slumlords. They took care of the tenants. They gave them a great
100%.
quality life. And I think
100%.
that is the reputation that is going to stay with your kids when they look back and like, wow, my parents did some great things.
Yeah.
And they're going to look up to you.
Yeah. I hate the way some landlords manage things, because even though my properties are in bad areas, the last thing I ever want is to be considered a slumlord. So when I see people really not maintaining their properties, treating their tenants poorly, it frustrates me, because you put in all that effort and all that time to be a good person, and then all it takes is one knucklehead to really ruin the reputation for all landlords. I mean, you go on Reddit, man, and forget Section 8. Pretend it's like all of real estate. You go on Section on Reddit or wherever it may be, bigger pockets, all the forums, and you'll have people so mad with landlords. Like, oh, how dare they have this many properties? They're just taking advantage of everybody, blah, 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 blah. They're slumlords this, slumlords that. It's like, not everybody does that. What minority group really does this and makes all of us look bad? Like Airbnb. You have an Airbnb, I think. I have a few Airbnbs now.
Right.
And all the people see is like, oh, they're Airbnb and they're ruining the location. Everybody, all the neighbors hate them, blah, 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 blah. It's like, no, man, we're just providing a service. Sorry, but a good Airbnb person has a good reputation, and a bad one gets the 1 stars, and then nobody's renting from them. Right.
Exactly.
So,
well, Jeremy, tell us a little bit about, your portfolio strategy. Like, why did you decide to invest in short-term rentals, Airbnbs, and also Section 8? Is that like your long-term portfolio strategy going forward, or where are you leaning? Where are you thinking?
I feel hypocritical, but I never. So to me, the old mantra of like, if you wholesale and you flip, you rely on inventory. Right. So to me, wholesaling and flipping is more of an inventory thing. It's not real estate. To me, real estate is owning a property and holding a property and not disposing of it. That's why I feel like a hypocrite, because I did dispose of a few properties, but it wasn't because I didn't want to hold them. It was just like, now they're costing me more than why I should hold on to them. Right. So I've mixed my short-term rental with my lower income in order to keep it sustainable and to optimize my profits, because I don't want to put low-income housing tenants in homes that they're going to destroy and then cost me thousands of dollars of repairs, thereby lowering my yearly yield, right? So by having Airbnb, I'm fortunate I live in a beach town. So some of the properties I have are better suited for Airbnb. They're not on the water and they are seasonal, but there's a strategy. And I'm sure everybody's, that does washes knows that there's midterm length and there's short term, right? So right now, I have 3 Airbnbs. I have one that's still being fixed. One of them is actually a midterm until May, like June 1st, I think, because then June 1st starts peak season, and then bam, now that's going to short term, and that's going to go maximize my Airbnb potential. And then once the season's over, you switch the seasonality to mid to long term. So like I'm hoping for month to months or 3+ months until the season's over, right? You gotta cancel out the winter, the colds, because a lot of people who are novice, and I'm no expert by any means, but a lot of people who are novice are like, all right, well, my beach property is going to make $30,000 over the summer, and then nobody's going to live in it for the rest of the months. Like, that's dumb.
Yeah. And I
dumb.
think that's where you are coming in with an analytical mindset,
Right.
and you're trying to figure out like, hey, how do I best maximize? What's my highest and best use of the property during this time? Not just for my whole exit strategy, but for throughout the entire year.
Yeah.
So
And
I
it's
think
not
it's
to say
amazing.
I'm done, man. I'm not done with trying to. I have a piece of property still, a vacant land. That hey, if anybody watching here is a GC or has any interest, hit me up. But I have a piece of property that I'm talking to, hopefully, and they haven't answered me back. I guess they don't like me. But I'm for assisted living rehab.
Got it.
For like alcohol and stuff. So I'm waiting to hear back from them because ultimately I want to be like, hey guys, like I'll build you 3 houses right now and I'll rent them to you. But I want to know what kind of terms you have going on. I want to know how you function. I want to know, okay, am I building it by myself and then just like leasing it to you long term? Are you gonna have somebody living in there? If so, like how many rooms do you need? Is it per bed? How many beds per room? Is it just 1 bed per room? If so, okay, then what's your average rate? There's like a lot of little mathematics that goes behind the scenes that will help me anyway decide if I'm going to build for them or if I'm just going to build a house and rent it out to another short-term person or something. So man, I don't know. I'm a master of going off tangent. This is why I'm more of a visionary and not a what's the other one for the avatar?
the integrator, right?
That's what it was. I'm not an integrator. I'm a visionary.
Yeah. So, I mean, tell us why. So you're working on assisted living right now, but let's talk a little bit about market selection. Let's talk a little bit about how do you succeed in neighborhoods that might be, like a Class D neighborhood.
Yeah.
So you have a few properties in Class D neighborhoods. You also look into assisted living. How did you pick those neighborhoods, and what made you successful, and what would you caution folks that are listening right now? Like, how
the answer that everyone is going to hate. I just did. I literally found it. I bought it. And then I was like, oh, crap. What are you going to do, man? You got to roll with the punches, I wasn't like, I'm going to look for this part of town. Oh, you have only 3 gunshots? Nah, no sweat. Whatever. How many police reports? 100? Whatever. It's not 5, right? So let's go. It was literally one of those, you jump in and that's it. You do it.
Love it. But when you look back now, what do you think you would have done differently now? Knowing what you know now, what would you have done differently to pick like a better neighborhood?
Yeah. I mean, shoot, like I said, when I first came in, the prices were very affordable and reasonable. What would I have done? I think being a visionary and knowing how bad these neighborhoods were, I honestly don't think I would change too much. If anything, I would go in harder. Because at one point I owned like half of a block. And I think I should have gone and tried to own the whole block.
Wow. That would have been smart. Yeah.
Because when I'm in control of who stays there, then all the bad will get pushed away.
Yes.
Right. So you try to better the neighborhood rather than just like I own 1 or 2 select properties and then they do bad things, but I don't have control of the neighbors. But if I had control of the neighbors in some form or fashion, then perhaps for myself and for, I guess, neighboring areas or whatever, like blocks, because literally it's like I have 1 block that you walk 5 houses down and it's like a gang territory.
Wow.
But if you push them away, then you can help kind of clean it all up, because the neighbors do appreciate the houses I do have in certain neighborhoods, that the neighbors appreciate it because they see that I take care of the properties. Not everybody would, and they'd be falling down. So would I say, you know what, forget single families, let me just do multifamily from the get-go? I mean, maybe, but I don't know, man. I like to think I'm a decent person and do the same thing, but I'd be lying if I didn't say I'd humor a multifamily or something a little more large scale, because these single houses aren't for everybody. There's a lot of problems, as they say.
Mm-hmm.
A multifamily transaction, although harder to get, is a lot harder to manage than many single family houses. Especially
true.
when you're the one managing yourself. If you have a property manager, forget about it. You don't know what's going to happen. You know, most property managers suck. Like, they will put in anybody. So,
Yeah.
you know, the feces roach infested properties I had they're my fault. I can't blame the
And you
tenant. I
right,
blame
and you have
myself.
no one to blame on those ones.
Yeah, I
And
blame
I mean,
myself
that's how.
for not checking
And
in on them more frequently. That's on
yeah,
me. That's on me.
but I think you found success by managing your own properties, right? So we talked a
Yeah.
little bit about the neighborhoods and how you wouldn't change, but maybe you had an opportunity, you would have acquired a whole
Yeah.
neighborhood so you can control and help
Yes.
screen the people of their neighbors. So
Yeah. Yeah.
because then you're not building a portfolio anymore. You're building a community in
Yeah.
that aspect.
Yeah.
And
The
you're
community knows,
really
and I don't even have that many properties there. And I walk down the block and everyone's like, "Hey, Jeremy, what's up, man? Hey, dude, how you doing? Hey, yeah,
that is so cool.
you're chummy."
Yeah.
And they'd be like, "Yo, Jeremy, there was they were 4 a.m. They're making loud noises over there, man. You got some hookers walking out there." I was like, "Yep. All right, Charles. Thank you, man. Appreciate it."
Like I can't do anything about that too, right?
Yeah.
And well, let's talk about property management. You manage your properties right now on your own. Why did you decide to go along that route? Did you even explore hiring a third-party manager for your properties?
So
Tell us a little bit about your decision
So
process.
for my W-2, doesn't occupy much time. Honestly, it doesn't occupy much time. So I'm like, well, why am I going to pay? Because when you have a single family, I don't know if anybody knows, if you hire a property manager, you're not paying multifamily costs. You're not giving 5% of your gross, right? You're giving them 10 to 20.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have a traditional mortgage, again, this is single family. It's not multifamily. If you have a mortgage of $1,000 and your rents are only 12, then you got to give them $120. Well, now you're only at $80, right? So AC breaks. Oh man, you're in trouble. And that's if you don't do any due diligence, any underwriting, I should say, and have that low of a gap, right? You got to be careful with your margins. You don't, like, they always have the 1% rule, right? I never liked the 1% rule. I was more into like 10. That's safer. That's much safer. And yes, they're hard to come by, of course, but if it were easy, then everybody would be doing it, right?
Right. And I think you have that criteria for how you select and buy properties, right?
Yeah.
And I think I want to make sure I emphasize this point where people forget about these big fixes, air conditioner breaking out, like roof fixes.
Yeah.
If you're only making $80 a month, dude, that could wipe out years of cash flow.
Like, look at my last one. I had a tenant in there for a year and a half. I stopped checking in on them. Normally, I would check in on the house themselves 3 to 4 months. Along comes life, and I have a baby. I hadn't checked in on the property in a year. I go there, infested with roaches, smelled like dude hazmat suit style. And I'm not even exaggerating. I'm dead serious. Like, it was disgusting. It was the most disgusting thing I've ever seen. And then they also have inspectors that come in yearly, right? But by the time I had checked it and they had gone in, it was cool. But then when inspection came due, I was like, oh, geez, like, I haven't been there in a while. I hope it's in okay condition. Inspector goes, I'm never going to that property again.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
He's like, I didn't even have to walk through the door. I literally opened the door and I knew it was bad. And I was like, don't tell me that. Come on, man. So I go to the property and I look at it and I'm like, holding back vomit. You know what I mean? I was like, oh, this is so bad. Anyway, $14,000.
Was that $14,000 to clean up the place?
Clean it up and refix it, like brand new. I had to put in new flooring. Of course, you had to get the roaches out. You had to bomb the place. And guess what I'm not getting? I'm not getting, because when you work, I don't know how necessarily Section 8 in North Carolina anyway, but they don't pay you anything. They're not reimbursing you. Can you make an insurance claim? Not for that, not for that.
Yeah.
So loss of rent, loss of property damage, right? So that particular house was making me $12,000 a year. Well, guess what? Guess how much I've made in that year then? -2, right? That was
You
right.
just had a big $14,000 issue. So let's kind of walk through what happened with that tenant, right? Did you have to evict them, right?
Oh yeah.
Management, right?
Yeah. Rule number one, I think, for most real estate investors is you only invest in places with good landlord laws, right? So for me, I evicted them and they were out in 20 days. The best part was we go to court and I was like, no way this person's showing up. No way. Absolutely no way. Now, mind you, also a little side note is that their lease had expired and I just had them on month to month. I don't care, I'm like, whatever. This rent didn't really go up, so whatever, I don't care. So the lease had expired anyway. So when I did the eviction, you go to the courthouse and the person shows up. And they're like, oh, why are you here? I was like, well, the lease expired. They left the house all trashed and I need to get them out to clean it up. Then the tenant had the audacity to be like, oh, there's like a hole in the wall. It's not that bad. Like, why are we here? Blah, 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 blah. Freaking judge goes, landlord wants you out. You have 10 days by.
Wow.
Literally, verbatim. That's what he said.
Wow.
Landlord states, like, there's a reason they're so freaking great. Like, yes, other people would argue that they're not, but for real estate investors, they're phenomenal. Because, for example, my mother has a Section 8 house that she owns in New York, and the tenant has been in that property for 13 months. Not paying, because the court will just whatever, man, they'll just allow it, and the people aren't stupid. They'll figure out a way, whether it's like, I just deposited $1 in their account. Well, guess what? Refresh that timer. So they are sneaky. They're not stupid. They're all con artists.
Resourceful, right? They are so resourceful. And so for your tenant that you had to evict, right? You got them out within 20 days. How long did it take for you to get someone in there to fix the floors, to repaint, get the smell out, bomb the place, get rid of the roaches? Like, how did it take to get you?
Yeah, like 2 weeks. It wasn't that bad. Yeah, it was like 2. Yeah, because like I said, I had met my contractor, whom I still use, and he always lies. He's like, Jeremy, I'm putting you at the front of the line. Anything that ever comes up, he's like, you started me, bro. So I got your back. Anything that happens, you let me know. I got you. We'll do this. I was all right. Now, for the past 5 or 6 years, him and I always do things, fixing things here and there, So he was in and out within 2 weeks. If you've ever done subsidized housing, it takes about 2-ish weeks to even get somebody in there, because they got to go and then they got to write up to the state saying, like, so-and-so is going to lease it. Here's this form here. There's this, get permissions. There's an inspection. So within 2 weeks, my thing was ready and had somebody in it, but it wasn't for like a month until somebody actually could move in, because of paperwork.
Got it.
Right. Got it. So it was a fast turnover, but it doesn't mean I didn't lose money. Ultimately, on my taxes, my returns, if you have a good CPA, you can say, depreciate these things, because now when the tenant's gone and any repairs you do, that's a capex, right? That's deductible. Yep. So you just have them do all that kind of jazz, but still, it's not fun, man. You don't want to lose that much money, and that's not my only one. I've had that happen, not to that level, but I've had that happen on multiple properties, ultimately breaking my bottom line, which stinks, but it is what it is, right?
Yeah, but I think I want to highlight for folks, like, you had an issue where it seems like one of the worst situations where you walk into her home and you're almost throwing up, but
Yeah.
you recovered, right? It took about 20 days to get tenants out. It took another 2-3 weeks to kind of get it back rent ready. I mean, the bottom line hurt, but I think we just demystified the process for people. And I think that is so, so important. And I want to thank you for sharing that story, because now people are like, okay, that sounded terrible, but I can get my property back up and rent ready in about 5-6 weeks, probably with another couple of weeks to just get inspection and stuff like that. But it's not that bad. All right. It's not like the end of the world.
Well, I mean, shoot, it can be though, for like, if a regular person I'm fortunate in that I had multiple real estate properties and I had good cash flow and I had reserve. It's all about, all right, if I had to recommend to somebody what to do, all right, profit first, number one, like the real estate edition. Learn how to separate your CapEx with your own profit and make sure you have like protection, have those resources for a just in case, because things will happen. If you're a landlord, it's not, oh man, this happened. It's more like, when is it going to happen? Oh, it happened. Okay, well, shoot, time to fix it. But if you only have one property and you don't have those resources and you're hoping to do the bigger pockets, I'm going to burn this thing out. I'm going to rent it to somebody and things are going to be great. It's like, it's not so easy. And if you are limited on your budget and you can't take those $10,000-$20,000 hits, God forbid there's I don't know, maybe you have insurance, right? But there's a flood. Well, guess what? If you've got insurance for wind and hail, well, guess what's not covered? Flood, right? So you better have a reserve or at least a strategy in place to protect yourself from this stuff. Because I recovered, but it doesn't mean Bob on the corner would. It might ruin him.
Right. What do you recommend for reserves, kind of starting out in real estate investing? Like how many months do you have?
Man, I hold like a year in reserve.
That's awesome.
Because I've just seen it, stuff happens. And so I hold a lot in reserve.
Which makes sense, because you just went through something that took years full of cash flows.
I swear this year, 2022, was probably the worst year for me in my portfolio and damages. I must have spent $60,000 through all my properties.
Wow.
It was not a fun year. It was not a fun year.
Section 8 rentals.
Yeah.
Got it.
Specifically, it was not a good year.
I mean, sometimes you're going to have those bad years. But Jeremy, I also want to talk about, like, do you have any stories of folks that you've been able to help them change their lives, turn it around for them? Like anything you can share that can help inspire folks, like, hey, this is also a great business model. Sometimes sometimes you can make money also while helping people.
Yeah. So there's always a gem in after renting for a while, right? So I have, of my tenants, I think I have 2 that have been there for a long time. And they're grateful. And I'm grateful to them because they're genuinely people that needed help, who said, I'm on track, I'm in rehab, I'm like off drugs. I'm going to do my best to stay straight and not sway. And they have been phenomenal. Not all of them. Of the, 20, 30 tenants I've had, only like 2 have been keepers. So for lack of a better word. But when you have those good tenants, like I'll bend over backwards because they've taken care of the property. So I'll bend over backwards. Like they call me and they're like, oh, my whatever broke. I'll be like, I'll fix it. I'll fix it tomorrow. Like no problem. With my other tenants, if it's something stupid, because I've had people be like, oh, my light bulb went out. Like that's your problem, dude, not mine. Like I'm not going to go over there to change your light bulb. But for these, like in this case, this woman, like she doesn't walk well. She was an alcoholic, drugs. So when she does need something, I will gladly go to help her out, because she does take care of the unit. And she keeps it spotless. She does her best. And with her age, she's older. She's like, I want to die here. Like, this is going to be my last house. I want to rent it forever, and I plan on dying in this house. I said, well, that's really sad, but I will be glad to have you until you can't be there anymore. You know, and it's like a weird, creepy thing to have a conversation with a tenant.
Yeah.
But you have those kind of people in these situations that they don't have anything else, man. You know, they don't have family, they don't have friends. They have I think she's got a Chihuahua.
Yeah.
So, you know, she's a good person, but she like, oh, I won't kick her out unless she destroys the property, and then I'll still feel bad. And like, I don't like kicking people out, man. Who likes kicking people out? Like, you have to be heartless. Even the person that trashed my property in disgusting ways, I still felt bad. I felt remorse because like she seems like a good person. And guess what? Like the one thing, this is if there's a takeaway for this, it's giving people second chances is nice, right? So in their cases, I don't like doing evictions, not because it's a pain in my butt. It's quite easy. More because these lower income people, whether Section 8 or otherwise, if they have an eviction on their record, they can no longer rent from anybody. And Section 8, you lose your voucher, which is huge. And in this one, like no landlord will rent to them. So where are they going to stay?
Exactly.
Like under a building or something. Like, I don't know. Like, I don't want that. I don't want that for anybody, you know? So.
And I think one of those, like those negatives, unfortunately, sometimes you have to enforce it, especially if someone's trashing your home. Right. 100%. But I think that's one of the reasons why people are less afraid to get into Section 8, because now, sure, there are different problems, but you know that people have something to lose. They have something on the line. And if they're educated about that, then they're more likely to take care of your home and encourage more people to get into the space to invest in affordable housing.
Yeah. There are also people that give bad names. Like I had this one guy who, so most of these people have payees, right? So the government gives me direct deposit, and then they have a payee that the government gives them the rest of the money, and then that payee pays all their bills. And I had this one guy who I kicked out. I forgot for what reason. I think it was drugs or something, drug use. Because ultimately, if you're in rehab and you're in my unit and you remain using drugs like this, you're breaking the lease, and I don't want that.
Yeah.
Not that because it's bad for the neighborhood, it's bad for everybody. Because when you're a landlord, you have to worry about the neighbors too, right?
Yeah.
So I kicked this guy out, but he hadn't paid the water bill, and he sends me a message. He's like, "Hey man, why you charging me $100 for water?" I was like, "Well, buddy, like I paid the water. You owe me the money. So you're stealing $100 from me?" Quiet. Like they say nothing. You know what I mean? So it's the audacity of some of these people. Like the government's trying to help them.
Yep.
And I'm for that. Many would say, "Oh, blah, the government needs to step out." Blah 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 blah. Like I'm a proponent for the government helping people who need it. You know, but there are those that unfortunately don't deserve it, and that sounds mean, but it's like a reality because some people don't deserve it. And when you do those kind of things, when you trash units and give the organization helping you a bad name, then you don't deserve it anymore. But you know, and you make everybody look bad. Just like a landlord, if you're going to buy 1,000 properties and all of them have broken floors and broken roofs and no AC and no water, blah blah blah, then you don't deserve to have those properties. Sorry. Like maybe you're a good business person and you're making a ton of money from it, but like morally, you're not a good person.
Agreed. And I think we just got to harp on the fact that like you cannot change the whole world. You got to help the people that want to be helped, that are demonstrating that they deserve some of the help. At least they made some conscious choices in life to change some habits or something like that. Right. But I think that's so important. So Jeremy, I know we're getting to the end of the show, but we always want to ask like some mindset related questions, right? Tell us a little bit about like the mindset shifts you've had to kind of go through to get into real estate investing, and how have you like gone over like things like analysis paralysis, which we've talked about a little bit before?
Man, I think myself, like everybody else, you go on. Now we have the resources like YouTube, right? You go watch thousands and thousands and thousands of hours of YouTube videos. You think you know it all. And many times you do know a lot of information. But what use is knowing all that information if you're not going to use it? Like even me right now, right? I'm getting into multifamily. I'm LP in a few things, but I haven't found my own property to GP in to go look for the sponsor, because I'm like, well, who's going to want to, if I'm looking at a property that's $10 million, like who's going to want to sponsor my property? Who's going to want to work with me? Who's going to want to do this? Who's going to want to do it? It's stupid. It's dumb, because you might know the information and you might be of use to somebody that actually wants to work with you. So even now, I'm still dealing with analysis paralysis. I'm sure you're dealing with analysis paralysis. I'm sure every investor is dealing with analysis paralysis. It's just like, I hate to say it, but get over it. You can't project your feelings onto other people. Like, hey, Kent, you have $10 million. You want to sponsor my deal? Like in my mind, I'm like, Kent doesn't want to work with me. No way. But I'm just projecting. I don't know. You might be like, well, dude, you're sweet. Like, let's work. You know what I mean? But don't project. Don't project what your feelings are. Just like when you're cold calling somebody and you're asking them, oh, I know you probably don't want to sell your house to me. It's like, why are you projecting?
Right. Why
don't project, dude. Like, you don't know what's going on in their mind. So just dive in. If you want to do real estate, cool. Find something you want to do. I'll give you the analysis paralysis for that, whether it's multifamily, single, however you want to rent, short, long, midterm, like whatever. If you want to just like be an LP and stuff, cool. Pick one.
Yes.
And do it. And that's it.
Love it. Love it. Love it. And I think throughout this entire conversation, Jeremy, you're someone I would invest with, man. You have a heart. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. You're a family man. Your kids look up to you. We know you're a good person because you take care of these people and you have a warm heart that is willing to give people a second chances. And sometimes you can tell people whether or not you like someone and trust someone just from the consistency of the decisions they made over the.
Yeah, nobody invests with you if they don't have trust in you, Yeah. That's just the way it works. There's like a triangle. I think it's like, somebody, you trust somebody, and then like, would you invest with somebody? You can't like skip the no and then into the invest with. Like, you have to have that trust. Otherwise, it's
That's right. And your value is also, you have a great contractor network. You have a great network now in North Carolina. People would almost be silly to not take advantage. Like, wow, Jeremy knows a lot of great people. And sometimes being successful in a business is really having the right team in place. Sometimes that is not drive.
It's about the team, dude. And my team is never big enough. Like, I don't have a lot of people on my team. I might know a few people, but you can't succeed in real estate by yourself. Never. You can't. Like anybody, you go to the Black Rocks and you see all the other stuff and you see how much they own. It's like they're not using their own money. Like, like they're using other people's money, and they hire underwriters and they'll hire these other guys. Like nobody does this by themselves.
That's exactly right. Well, Jeremy, this has been an awesome conversation. I just want to thank you again for our investment in affordable housing. Like, without people like you, I wouldn't have never had a stable home kind of growing up, so that I can thrive and just have a stable home to kind of grow up in. So thank you.
Yeah, dude. Thanks for having me on, man. I appreciate it, dude. And give me a buzz, dude. Let's work, man. Let's work. I know you want a beach house. Come on, man.
I do. And that's why I sent you some data, right? On all that stuff. Oh no, seriously, Jeremy, thank you so much. If people want to reach out to you and contact you, learn a little bit more about your journey, or if there's anything that you need in your business right now, like where can people reach out to you and what do you need in your business?
I mean, if they have my name, they can just hit me up directly, jeremy.garrido@gmail.com. I never have ever done social media as far as my company. So normally reaching out to me personally is just the way to go, because I don't advertise. People would think I'm stupid for not doing it, but I don't do that. So maybe I will down the line. I don't know. But for now, I'm just my name. You see it right there. Whatever. Here, right?
Yep. Yep, that's right.
That's how you reach out. Tack them at Gmail, and that's how you get to me.
All right. Thank you a lot, Jeremy. Thank you for coming on the show. Thank you for sharing your stories.
Yeah, Kent, take it easy, buddy.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, man. Have a good one.